Amy Schneider made history last night as the most successful woman in the show's history with 39 wins so far, second only to Ken Jennings, who won 74 games and has been hosting the show through Schneider's winning streak. But 20 years ago, neither of their streaks would have been possible because up until 2003, players could win 5 games max before they were forced to retire. And my next guest argues that's how it should be. Tom Nichols recently wrote in The Atlantic, quote, "Jeopardy is no longer a show that celebrates the smarts of the average citizen. It is now a showcase for people who prep and practice, who enter the studio determined not to shine for a day or even a week, but to beat the game itself." Tom Nichols is a Chicopee, Mass native, by the way. He joins me now, and I should note he was forced to retire 5 wins in back in 1994. And yes, I am jealous. Tom, it's good to see you again. Thanks for being here.
Jim.
So the fact that I enjoyed every one of Matamotio's 38 victories and the fact that I loved all 39 of Amy Schneider's so far, according to you, is evidence that something is wrong with our culture, I think you said. What is it specifically that is wrong?
Well, first, let me say, Matt and Amy and, James and all of them, smart folks, great players. But there's something I think that Jeopardy has lost. There was a kind of charm to Jeopardy where the cool thing was you saw a lot of your fellow citizens. You saw, the New York City cop, the housewife from Dubuque, the librarian from Michigan. And you saw a lot of those folks come through and compete with each other in a pretty fair match. What's lost now, and I think what's wrong, is that the game is inherently unbalanced. I've played the game. I played a total of 8 games, including 2 tournaments. Once you've won 2 or 3 times, you're already developing an edge in the studio that is very hard for new folks to overcome. And I think the thing that's bad about our culture is that we're just really kind of enjoying this kind of Hulk smash gladiator, throwing these hapless new folks into the Coliseum and just watching them torn apart. I've been noticing over the last part of Matt and Amy's runs that most of their opponents are mathematically eliminated from winning the game 18 to 20 minutes into the game.
That's a real problem. In your piece in the Atlantic, you talk about the pro versus the casual or real person player. You tell a story about Holzhauer and the person who beat him. Can you retell that, please?
Yeah, James Holzhauer is a Vegas odds guy. He studied the game. He developed algorithms about this, about how fast could you rack up the money, find the daily doubles. That's another thing, by the way, experienced players have a much greater chance of doing, is they can control the board longer and get to the daily doubles. And when Holzhauer was finally beaten, he was beaten by someone who had literally written her graduate thesis on Jeopardy questions. That's not ordinary Americans, kind of showing their knowledge and their trivia skills. That's Moneyball. That's professionals going at it in a way that, less committed people could never do. And I just think that that's unfortunate.
Speaking of Moneyball, obviously you believe then that Tom Brady should have been capped at 5 Super Bowls, after which he had to go to what, the CFL or something? Would that have been better for us, you think?
Well, Jim, one of the things you may know this about me, and a lot of people who follow me on social media know about me, is that I don't happen to like professional sports because I think it is dominated by this, assembling high-paid gladiators it's like rollerball. That's a callback to an old movie. It's just assembling gladiators under the banners of cities that most of these guys don't live in, don't care about, won't go. This isn't like Ted Williams or Yaz playing for the Sox. And so, I don't want Jeopardy to be that way. If they're going to make Jeopardy this way, move it to Vegas and get it over with.
Speaking of Jeopardy that way, as I said, you won 5 straight games. Well, no, you didn't. You won 5 games when there was a 5-game max. Are you the only person in the history of Jeopardy who took 6 games to, quote, win 5 in a row, sort of? Are you it?
Yeah, I'm part of a very small group of people over the course of Jeopardy who got invited back to the show because I was right about a question that Jeopardy was wrong about.
I love it.
I lost my fifth game because they had ruled me wrong on a question, and it turns out I was right. And Jeopardy, of course, has wonderfully devoted fans. After my show aired, it shows you how long ago this was. They were deluged with faxes and emails saying, that young professor, he was right. And so Jeopardy invited me back. So technically I had to win 6 games to win 5.
Whether you like them or not, I know you like them personally and, admire them. Whether you like that they've won this many games, when you watch the Amodios and the Schneiders of the world, I watch and say, I can't believe how smart they are. But then I listen to you and read you, and your contention is it's less about brains and more having a brain like, what'd you call it, a lint roller? What's your point?
You really have to have a brain like a lint roller in the sense that you have to be able to recall a lot of disparate little facts that you've picked up over the course of your life. It helps to be well-read. I think the best Jeopardy players are people who read a lot, but you have to be able to remember stuff. The example I always give is that I learned in 6th grade, and I don't know why I remember that I learned it in 6th grade, but I learned that Handyman, the Leakey family archaeological dig, that was called Homo habilis. And I actually got asked that on Jeopardy. And later somebody said to me, my God, Tom, you must know so much about anthropology. And I was like, well, I was paying attention in 6th grade when Mr. Kennedy said Homo habilis, and I just remembered it. That's a really important part of the game.
Last thing before you go, we discussed this on the radio the other day. I sit on my couch and I watch. I was not a huge fan during Alex Trebek. Don't get angry at me, everybody. But this new incarnation, maybe because of the pandemic is why I've been watching, and maybe I'll go back to the original ones. I am nervous almost every single close game. You're standing on the stage for 6 games, 20 feet away from Alex Trebek? Are your knees knocking? How do you concentrate and not get totally blown away by the moment, if you know what I mean?
The first time you go out there, it is absolutely terrifying. You think, my God, that really is Alex Trebek standing right there. And the audience is there. And my God, I could make a complete fool of myself with one wrong question in front of millions of people. And I think the good players are the ones that can get over that. And that's why, again, I think these long multiple runs, by the time Matt or Amy or James have won 10 or 15 games, you're in their house. They're used to it there. They're comfortable. They're not nervous. And it's just not fair to the new folks who get kind of thrown into that and get rattled immediately by somebody just kind of rolling over them. So yeah, it's scary. It's definitely terrifying.
So I want you to know you make a very persuasive argument here and in the Atlantic. Despite that, I will be watching Amy Schneider going for 40 tonight right after this show. We'll see how it goes. It's good to see you. Be well, Tom.
You too, Jim.